Hey, hey,
What up, man? Long
what's up,
time no
man?
see.
I know. I'm,
It's
I'm
been
not sure I
what?
know who you are.
It's been what? 3 weeks?
Oh my gosh, I
It's been
know.
too long. Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's that busy time of the year where you're just swamped between everything beekeeping, but then everything else.
Yeah, no doubt. I think
So
everybody down here
crazy.
understands. If you got bees, you know this is the time of the year when it's just
Mm,
nuts, and we've
Yeah.
definitely gone through a extremely busy time here,
Uh,
and I know you guys are going through it up there as well.
yeah. Yeah, and it's like we're like in the thick of it now because I went and checked. I I went and checked the couple colonies that I have at the farmer's property, and me being the horrible beekeeper that I am, I let them go. I think they went about 5 weeks. I put the supers on them, made sure that they were somewhat set, and I just let them do their thing. I thought, let me just see how they do. And I went and checked them, and they had both supers. Literally every frame is packed, capped. So then I ran into I was in the situation where, well, I don't have any boxes there. And then I go back over to where all my stuff's at. I had no frames put together.
Oh man.
So it's just, yeah, it's been very, very busy. So,
Yeah, they'll make a changing condition in a hurry, either for good or bad. But man,
oh, yeah.
they'll be cranking along just at a steady
Yeah.
pace, and all of a sudden, boom, you can't keep up with them, or
Yep.
sometimes they'll crash on you pretty fast too. And
Yeah.
hopefully that won't happen, but it can happen. So
Yeah. They're pretty busy. The one colony is packed, and the other one is pretty darn busy as well. So I'm not worried about either of those colonies. So
yeah,
yeah, good stuff though. But hey, before we get going, we are missing a third member of the stream team here, and Greg is doing Greg stuff, so he'll probably be on. I think he's going to pop on at some point during the live, but we have some other people that might be able to fill in, in
I
Greg's
think
spot. I don't know if he can quite fill Greg's shoes though, but we'll see. We'll get him up here in a couple minutes. But
okay.
what's been going on down your way?
Oh man. Well, the video is going to come out. I'm hoping tomorrow night. Somewhere around maybe 8 o'clock or so,
Oh, okay.
8 or 9 o'clock Eastern time, sometime tomorrow evening. And had Lisa down, or had Lisa, she lives close, but had Lisa over. We had Brian Lee came down from Birmingham, his son. Andrew came down from Auburn. He's at school up there, helped out with pulling some honey. We had Ed was there with his wife, Chris,
Nice.
and just had several people there came and helped out. It was a really fun time, and we harvested honey. It was 2 weeks
Mhm.
ago, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and we just had it was extremely hard work. A thunderstorm rolled through and we were pulling the honey, and up in Ozark, and of course that's where probably my most spicy bees are right now. So
Mhm.
that combination was interesting. I wish I would have gotten Brian's son Andrew. Andrew pulled up. He pulled up about the time we were just kind of getting started up there in Ozark. We'd already pulled some honey at the farm and where the pollination bees are, but
Mhm.
he rolled up in there and we were just getting started, and he thought, well, I can just kind of hang out. He didn't have his suit. His dad had his suit. He was bringing it. His dad wasn't quite there yet. He was driving down from Birmingham, and so Andrew thought he'd get about what, maybe 20 feet away or so, 25 feet away,
Oh man.
and it didn't take long for the bees to find him. And he was, next thing you know, he's running about 70, 80 yards away with the big cloud of bees above his head, just kind of. Uh,
Oh man.
Anyway, he got suited up and helped us out, and it was just a lot of fun. It was extremely hard work. I was absolutely just done. I mean, physically done after those 2 days.
Yeah.
And thank goodness we had a couple of folks from the local bee club here. Ray came over, and Tim, and they helped us out. And I hope I'm not forgetting him. Of course, Rusty was there, the guy that
Mhm.
owns the but the property there where we harvest. And so, gosh, I'm not forgetting anybody.
How
Justin came and helped out a little bit, and my daughter's boyfriend Chris came and helped a little bit. And so,
how much did
good
you end
time.
up with?
We ended up for the year, including the 5 buckets we got when I did the Vivor review there, we got a total of about 60 buckets is what I ended up with. And then
Oh my
Honey
gosh!
Hill got 9 of that was Honey Hills, and so it was a good harvest. But
Wow.
that's about half of what I got last year. But remember, last year we
Yeah.
harvested twice. So
Yeah.
it's strange, by this time of the year, we're normally done down here pretty much, but
Mhm.
Rusty tells me the bees are in a flow right now. So
Yeah.
they aren't robbing anything. You put the supers out and the bees aren't really robbing it. And so
Oh, there's
he's
something.
like,
Yeah.
well, it's unusual, but there's some kind of flow going on now. So
Right.
we're going to let them roll for about, 3 or 4 weeks, about a month. And then we'll check back maybe in late July and just see if there's anything to
Mhm.
pull. And I thought we were done, but maybe we'll get a little bit more. I'm not going to get real aggressive with it because I've got
Yeah.
some other plans coming up with some splits and maybe introducing some new queens. And
Mhm.
I'm really going to try to. I've got some queens coming, hopefully from Greg later in the summer. Maybe I can
Mhm.
get some from him and from another source. Hopefully, just almost requeen that whole Ozark yard. There are a few that are pretty nice up there, but there's 1 or 2 that are just absolutely off the chain, spicy still.
Mhm.
But it's overall better, I think, than it was last year. But still, it's just not where I need it to be, even close. And
Yeah.
so I figure if I can requeen almost that whole yard up there, minus Corey's queens, of course, that I put in there, and we do have a few new
Right.
queens that I with those early splits that did well, and they're okay. But I'm gonna just go through and try to break those things down and I just got to get that. The rest of my bee yards aren't bad, and that one's not horrible, but not as bad as it was, but it's still pretty spicy. And I'm trying to get that toned down. And if I can get 30 or 40 queens and just go up there and just pull splits, break them down, put new queens in there, and maybe it'll get it under control a little better. But that's kind of where we're at right now. Just as we, and then this past weekend I helped Rusty harvest his honey. That's kind of the deal we have. We combined our equipment on his property. He helps me
Mhm.
harvest mine, I help him harvest his or extract it. And he joins my crew and then I join his when he's
Yeah.
harvesting, so it works out good. It's a good time. But I'm looking forward to the future, man. I'm looking forward to trying to do something with these genetics and continue to try
Mhm.
and improve them, and maybe make some splits and do some different things like that. So yeah, it's
Good
exciting
stuff.
times. But I think
Yeah.
the worst of it, I say that I think the worst of it's over as far as the busy, but it's always busy when I'm trying to work full time and manage
Yeah.
those colonies. I
Oh
also
yeah.
ordered some in hive feeders. I'm going to try from Motherload. I've never really used those before. I'm going to try some of those for some
Have
of my splits I'm going to make. If I make splits in July when we're in a dearth, I feel like I need to feed those splits to keep the queen. If I introduce new queens or whatever, to help him accept those queens better. So I'm going to try them out. I ordered whatever it takes to get the discount. I think I ordered 40 of those,
okay.
the 1 gallon ones, and we'll
Did
see how they work.
and our first guest that we're going to have here coming on, I don't even know if he has the simple comb. Did
I don't
you
know either.
have you had any luck with your simple
No,
comb yet?
I got it in there too late, Brian. They were about done. I mean, it was right in the middle of what I thought was going to be the flow, but I think the flow was tapering at that time. And in
Oh,
order
okay.
for any of that comb honey stuff to work, man, it's just got to be on a really good flow with tons of bees. The hive was
Yeah,
appropriate, but they just didn't.
missed
No,
it.
it didn't work. But I don't think it was. It's just Ross rounds are the same way. Simple combs the
Yeah,
same way. I think it's all that way because they're having to draw in a
right.
situation that's not really at all natural to them. And so they just have to be packed out and really
Yeah,
motivated and nowhere else to put it almost to really fill that stuff out. And so, how
yeah.
about you? Have you checked yours?
I I I haven't
You didn't
had
use it. You didn't use it.
frames. Yeah,
Okay.
they're still sitting in a box over here. I need to get frames, and I was on Blue Sky's website today.
Mm-hmm.
I have my cart sitting there, and I was just looking, and I'm like, am I going to have time to ride out there today? And
Just
I
make
just
sure it's the
thought
right size frames.
I
Yeah.
can't even. Well, I want to get. I need to get 30 deep frames.
Okay.
I need 20, and I want to have 10 extra just so if any break or anything, I just want extra. And I was going to get 20 more medium frames just to have them. I have enough, but just to have them, and then I want to see if I can get the simple comb. If I need to get a Dremel and maybe, you know, notch out some grooves or something.
Yeah, I just got I just used like a knife and carved it out so it was thin enough that it worked out good.
Yeah.
But for those who don't know what
See,
simple comb is, it's spelled
here,
SIMPLKOMB,
I'm gonna grab one.
and it's kind of it's a new way to make comb honey. It's brand new. They reached out to me a while back, and they sent me some to try out, but I just didn't utilize it properly. And it basically is in these individual cartridges like this. And is that folded back on itself, Brian, already?
Yeah.
So that you fold it back on itself and it sticks together. You put it in the frames. You back the frames up to each other and it peels them out. And then when you just pull it out and you separate them and snap them together, it's really super, super easy. And I believe it works, but I just didn't get mine in time. So I'll try it again next year in a good flow and see what happens.
Our first guest that we're going to have on here, and I know I want to talk about honey. And this product here, I would almost put money down. Like I would put $5 down. So buy a coffee or whatever it is, or a tea. You know, I don't know what his kind drink, but I do not think he has this product.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's pretty. They've been working on development for a while, but I don't think it's really been for sale for long. I think it's a pretty darn new product, and so
let's.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if they've reached out to him. But just like before we move on, to just welcome everybody into the chat. I know we got a lot of folks in here. We got a lot of people I recognize. And I can't recognize everyone.
Grammy's in here, Ed's in here, DC, Grayson,
Lisa,
all kinds of people,
tons of people. So welcome in everybody, and thanks for joining us tonight. And I hope you enjoy this. I think it's going to be a fun video. Brian was mentioning earlier before you hopped on, some of you that Greg is unavailable right now, but he's going to try to pop in hopefully during the chat sometime tonight. And but we went ahead and we're going to roll with it. We got some. We got a fun guest or two I think everybody will recognize and enjoy tonight. So, Brian, I'm going to turn it right back over to you, man. You can just run this thing however you want.
Let's see if this here fella has this product.
That's interesting. Well, do you really think that there would be something new in beekeeping that would come out that I wouldn't have in my review list? So, yes, I have the simple comb. Not only that, they had some problems with the first batch, and they've sent out the new ones that do better. And you do know you have to paint that with beeswax first.
Yes.
You can't just stick that thing in there. So people that are watching, that's one of the kind of cumbersome aspects of it, is that you have to put a good coat of beeswax in that. And that kind of stifles people because they want to take it out of the box, put it in a frame, put it in their hive, and get going.
Yeah.
And as Bruce was saying, you kind of missed your time frame for comb honey. You really start that stuff early in the year. So all my comb honey supers are on and have been on.
Yeah.
But thanks for having me on.
Not a problem. I wanted to talk about honey a little bit. And, I know when I was sitting up at your place in your, the Way to Be building.
It's the Way to Be Academy.
The Way to Be Academy. I was one of the privileged few that I've been able to sit down and break bread, I guess, or we had those moments of fellowship there. But no, that building, I was really impressed by that thing. Other than you tried to cook me.
You can't stand the heat? Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. Yeah.
He can't take it. He can't take the heat.
No,
now I know your camera's overheated and quit on you.
They did. One of the interesting facts that I learned that day was when we were talking about, and I'll say it, the flow hive. What you were saying about the honey that is harvested from a flow super versus the traditional way of harvesting that Bruce just went through.
Right.
So Yeah. What information did you share with me?
Well, okay. Well, thanks for setting me up, by the way, because it's a
See?
polarizing discussion when we talk about the flow hive, and everybody's got their opinions about it, and it's for the non-beekeeper who just wants honey
Right.
without any responsibility whatsoever. And that is not the case, but it is interesting because we were all at Hive Life,
Mhm.
and as we know, when we listened to those judges that were giving their presentation, I don't know if you were out there when the judges came out and talked to the group. It was the biggest submission of honey products and honey that they had seen in 10 years. So I think if you walked
That's
away from that
amazing.
place with a blue ribbon, I think that's a major accomplishment.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
other thing is they didn't go into the origins or how the honey was extracted or what processes were used. Do you know what the dark honey category is?
I do not.
Bruce, any ideas?
You mean the black jar or the
It's called,
dark?
yeah, dark category. It means you don't look at the honey, you just taste it, smell it.
Yeah,
And
that's
entire
the black.
competition.
Yeah, the black. We down here we call it the black. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Where you just is blind. You don't. There's nothing else but just blind. Just taste. It's a 100% taste test.
Yeah. So the blue ribbon in that category, it wasn't discussed at Hive Life, but that person that submitted that, it came from a flow hive.
That's interesting.
And flow hive honey, and I know people don't like to hear it because it's got food grade plastic in it and all this other stuff as well. And there's an anti-plastic group. No problem with that. If you don't want honey in contact with plastic, that's good for you. But it's winning, and not just in the United States. University of Melbourne brought in a whole bunch of taste testers and honey sommeliers, and those are the expert smellers and tasters and the even the mouth feel of honey. And they had identical sources of nectar. So in other words, it's processed from the same area, the same honey, same climate, and the same crop that it was derived from. And they were across the board 100%. They selected the flow hive honey.
That's
and
interesting.
So one of the reasons that comes out is because most of us are running our honey through at least some kind of filter. You're going to run it through an uncapping tank, an uncapping screen. You're going to have some rough filter. Even if you do raw honey, you might filter to 200 microns or something and still let the pollen get through. So all these processes, if we look at people's honey houses, their honey is exposed. I mean, they have lids on all their equipment, but usually those lids are propped open, even tied open, clamped open in a lot of cases, because they're there for safety. But they found out that a lot of the particles that are just already in that space are getting into your honey. The other thing is we're smoking our bees at the time when we're removing honey. So we're removing honey supers, we're smoking. The smoke particulates are number one as far as what's being represented in the honey itself. And they do have an impact, however slight, on the flavor of the honey.
That's interesting.
So by bypassing all of that from the hive to the jar, however you feel about that process, we've skipped over all the other material contact that the honey would have. And a lot of honey processing also is they have heating. You have the hot rooms to warm up your honey before processing because it saves time, easy on the pumps and everything else. So again, those are avoided because your hot room while you're waiting to extract your honey in a flow hive is the hive itself. So it's in the 90s generally. So all of those things contribute to why that honey is cleaner and has those attributes. The other thing, of course, is not, we talked about this with Dr. Underwood recently, and I was looking behind her and she had, there's hives with 5, 6 supers on it. Commercial beekeepers, I'm sure Bruce probably does this. You wait until specific times and you do a harvest day, so a mass processing day. That's just expedient. You want to make the best use of your time that you can. But what we're also doing when we do that is we're combining all of the honey. So if we've had supers on, since May or April, then that's a great, nectar source at that time of year. If we harvested right then, we would get that early spring honey, but most commercial people keep it on till the end of the nectar flow, and then we're combining it all together, and we kind of get a unified or a homogenized flavor for the honey and everything. So there are differences in that way too, where you can get frame by frame, you can visually see the differences in how dark or light it is. So I don't think it has a commercial future. I know that probably the people that make it want to think that it would be picked up by some big commercial group. I really think it's a backyard niche, to have a flow hive.
Yeah.
The the forums are full of people that spent their life savings and made their kids go out and work for hourly wages just so they could get a flow hive, and then the bees didn't fill it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it ties in with what Bruce was mentioning earlier. If you can build comb honey, if you've got hives that are that strong, you can have flow supers, and they'll build those out.
Yeah.
And then once they've done it once they've used the frame, and once they've put their wax and propolis on it and sealed everything up, after you cycle it the first time, their recovery and restoration and refilling of those cells is much faster. So we've had them go completely emptied to completely full and capped in an 11-day cycle, and that's half a gallon per frame. So
wow,
very interesting.
Wow. Have you now, when have you harvested any of your flow hives yet? Any of your flow supers this season?
No.
Okay. Have you noticed that there's any difference as far as moisture content?
No, it's the same, because when the bees cap their honey, they're capping their honey.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the vessel is.
Yeah.
But
I just wasn't sure. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess they would.
Well, you've got
everything.
flow hives, don't you?
I have one, and so when I very first bought it, and that's actually what got me into beekeeping. You know, my mother wanted one, so I bought my mom a flow hive, and I wanted to go the traditional route. I just got, regular old Langstroth. I mean the flow hive, it's a Langstroth, but it's just the flow super where you have the difference. But I tried using that thing the very first time. I did not know that, like, you could pre-wax it. I was brand new.
Mm-hmm.
And around my area, I didn't know anybody that had one. Mm-hmm. So evidently I didn't look about an hour and 20 minutes away from me, or else I would have found somebody that had them. Mm-hmm. But when I set it up, then it just became an ant factory, and the bees did not touch it. And I thought, so I took it out, cleaned it up, just put regular supers on, and the bees filled them out. And I thought, all right, I'm just going to let the flow super, sit in the building for this season. Mm-hmm. Next year, I went and I waxed all the frames, and I got maybe a pint of honey out of it. They really did not touch it. And they were starting to get nectar bound. So I thought, well, this is just getting a little bit ridiculous with this flow super. Mm-hmm. So I took it off, put regular supers on. They filled them out. Mm-hmm. Third time, I went from double deep colonies to, I packed it down. I went to a single deep. So I really forced it down. I put the flow super on, and I put a super that was completely capped above it. And they ended up, I think I maybe got 8 or 10 pounds out of it. So they started to use it. Mm-hmm. Well, then last year, I took it down to Greg's place. I figured we could use it at the learning yard, and just even if we got one frame that we could harvest, at least that way people can physically see, here is a flow super, here's how it works. And we ended up getting, gosh, I don't know. I mean, we harvested a little bit off of each frame. I mean, we got 20 or 30 pounds out of it. Mm-hmm. So a little bit more, Mm-hmm. So, and he's got it on now. I don't know. I haven't been down to his place in probably about a month. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if they're filling it out. I'd imagine they are, just because we've had a decent flow. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I mean, a nifty concept, Yeah,
but I've never done any of the things you described. Like, I've never put wax on it. I've never prepped them. I did notice, because sometimes I'll stop over at someone's apiary and they've got one and they can't understand why it's not working. Mm. And I've looked at their frames before and found that their frames were not closed.
Oh.
If you look at the end of it, you can't put your end piece in unless the end leaf is closed.
Yeah.
I found a lot of people, when they're brand new out of the box, they think it's ready to go. They don't cycle
Yeah.
The frames open and close. And if they're cracked even a little, they're not using them.
They're not going to touch it. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are issues that I've actually found on other people's hives. And so I made a point to mention that. And I'm not here to promote, by the way, the Flow Hive to everybody that's watching today. I don't want everybody to run out and get one and think it's magic. But they do work for me.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's my area. It can't be the type of bees because I've run a variety of different stock of bees. I would say the Italian bees filled it the fastest. I don't keep those anymore for other reasons, but I don't know what to say about that. But
Yeah.
but they work for me, and I don't do any of those preps. And I know some people buy the knockoff versions. I don't know if the material might be different. I know physically they look identical. I don't know if composition of the material may have something to do with that. If you're getting one of the off-brand, rip-off ones or whatever they're called.
Right.
So some people do that and think it's Bruce.
I had a friend who had, they got into beekeeping, and they had, I think, 2 flow hives, and the next year they bought 3 or 4 of the knockoff Chinese version, and they looked pretty much the same, but the knockoffs ones were just cheap. They fell apart. They just were not. The materials were not near as good. They weren't consistently built, and they just weren't. They didn't seem to be near as good, and we didn't have a lot of success that year, but the flow hive, actually we got some honey off of it, and it went pretty well. But there's another I kind of went out. They bought some nukes from me a couple of years ago here in town. They're they've got some money. They're kind of wealthy folks here in town, and they of course they bought a flow hive, and I went out there and got a nuke in there and talked them into getting an apame hive too. Well, they love the flow hive. They've had great success with it. They've harvested honey off of it, and I think they just kind of wish they hadn't have gotten the apame. I'm not even sure if they have. They may just have the one colony going now, but they just really like it because they do maintain their bees, I think, pretty well, but they just want to. They don't have it for the honey anyway, but they do like to pull some honey off for family and friends whenever they can. And during a good flow here, those are the 2 people that I know that have them, and they do work, and you just got to have a good flow with a lot of bees. The one issue with the flow hive that I would ask Fred is, don't they traditionally come with just 1 deep and 1 honey super? Isn't that how they're built?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it's really not designed for the northern climate here anyway, because they put a single deep and it's 8 or 10 frames, standard Langstroth deep, and they put a queen excluder right on that. And then they go straight to the flow super. Yeah. And I put up a recent video that's called Supering Your Hives. And it shows the flow hive modification for the northern climate. So in other words, I bought an extra deep brood box from Flow, and I cut it off as a medium. And I took that extra piece and created a feeder shim out of it. And now we've got a medium that comes from Flow. Otherwise, you have to match it up with Langstroth boxes. And big surprise, they don't match up. There's a 1/4 inch difference in the overhang width-wise.
Just a little bit. Yeah, it seems like I actually had them because my bees a lot of them just absolutely explode. They're packed with bees, and I looked at that thing. I'm like, that is not enough space for these bees, and so.
Well, no, it's designed for an area that has a moderate nectar flow year-round.
Yeah,
so New South Wales, they don't have a winter,
So I actually had them buy a second medium box, and they did, and they put it on there, and they went right up into that thing, and then they went up and they filled up the flow super, and they just exploded up in there. But they also packed that second box with honey as well. And down here with the hive beetle situation, you can really get in trouble here if you can just get in big time trouble here with the hive beetles if you leave too much honey on. It's a balancing act to know how much to leave.
Right.
So they pack that out with honey, but somehow they've kept those bees alive. So they must be doing something right over there. And they've, I think, produced honey the last couple of years.
Yeah. So I have a similar climate to Brian. And I always make them fill that medium super first, wall to wall. Like when it's 80% full, that's when the flow super goes on. And that's my honey bridge. So I don't use a queen excluder. And then that medium super that's on there, that's their winter resource. So we've got over 40 pounds of honey there. Put an insulated inner cover on that when we get to wintertime, and that's all they've needed. So, and that 8 or 10 frame, it made no difference. But having the deep brood box filling first, 80 to 90%, don't load everything up. Because the other thing I see people do, they get their flow, any hive. This isn't just about flow hives. I've seen people buy the kits, and then they put everything together and set it out there and put bees in it. And you and I know that they're not going to use the space properly when we do that. So we definitely want them to 8 out of 10 frames or 7 out of 8 frames to be fully involved before we put the next super up. And sometimes if you find that they're kind of stop, maybe you're a little late, maybe you're like Brian and you ignore your bees, you don't get out there. So you come back and now we've got a chock-a-block hive. You pull that inner cover, you already know they're full because all that burr comb, all that connective honeycomb is all over the bottom of your inner cover. So when you pull that out, now we have to do something because we don't have compatibility with the frames with a flow super. So then what you can do is pull that medium super off. Now you have to put a queen excluder over your brood box and put that medium super that's full on top of the flow super. And then they'll be traveling up through there, and that encourages them to start to backfill the flow super. So it's another method that you can get to kind of kick them off if you put a medium super that's already mostly full or completely full on top of that flow super. And of course, that's a deep. That's the other thing. People can't lift it, you know? Sure. And I think Brian probably knows the frames aren't really designed. I don't care what people say. The frames aren't designed to be pulled individually. They just aren't. You're messing up the system.
So before I really did my research and, found out more about the flow supers, I was messing around with them one day and taking them out, and I had a frame completely come apart.
So like it flexed or something?
So ask me how long I had to sit. And because if you've ever seen them when they're apart,
sure,
there's two separate basic pieces. And they all fell down on the ground. And I was looking at this pile of basically flow super, like a frame parts. And I thought, oh, geez. And I mean, I was probably well over an hour matching up the individual little, it was horrible.
I don't know if I would admit to more than one other person that it took me an hour to.
Well, it's just us on here. There's no one else listening. So
I was showing someone how that is because they have the stainless steel wires and they're twisted and it is pretty flexible. And I was showing somebody who was doing, look how flexible it is, and it did that. It went, and they all went out. But there's only two kinds of pieces. One of them is the moving piece, and the other one is the tight frame. So every other one, and then you just put them all together. The end pieces, you put them together. That should have taken you. You were probably blindfolded, hanging upside down, right? So that's what because I've heard about this kind of extreme training for bee equipment. So
and the smoke also
go together pretty easy.
It's the Canadian smoke also. It was interfering with my eyesight and my senses. So
speaking of that, I'm in the purple zone here. We went from yellow to red to purple.
Yeah, we're there
whatever that color is. It looks like the fire is in our neighbor's yard. That's how dense it is out here.
Yeah.
It's bad. And some people, I did notice in the comment section, some people asked if the bees were reacting to that. Not according to my bees, because they're just doing everything. I was out there, just got stung on the finger before I came in. I cried a little, but I knew I had to buck up because I had to come in here and talk to you guys. So do we want to talk about honey? What kinds of things? I'm sure we don't want to disappoint people if they were told.
I know
that we would discuss.
Now, so I'm going to ask you this.
Yeah.
If I would assume we have to have at least one brand new beekeeper in the chat. And I think there's maybe only two people. So one of those two, they are a brand new beekeeper.
Okay.
If you were going to give that beekeeper advice on harvesting honey, what would you, Frederick Dunn, the way to be, say to this beekeeper?
Okay, so brand new beekeeper who wants to harvest honey.
Beekeeper.
And you know what? I'm glad you brought it up because this is what happens. People get into bees. They took a beginner course. Usually, I hope they did. They joined a beekeeping organization, which is a really good idea because you may need help with your first honey extraction. I also know that sometimes they get a package or they get a nuke their first year. And they're so excited because the idea that they're making honey and that you're going to get some can be overwhelming. And the urge to remove honey and not leave enough for the bees can also be overwhelming. And it's a very common beginner mistake. Because what happens at bee meetings? How much honey did you get? How much honey did you get? It becomes almost a status thing to stand there and say, yep, I pulled 150 pounds off of every hive. And those are my nukes. So anyway, the thing is, it's looked at as a mark of success. So what it really is you have to put the bees first. And this is always my philosophy is start with the bees, start with the colony. They're preparing for winter. When they first start flying in spring and they hit that first nectar flow, they're preparing for two things, reproduction and survival in winter that's going to come at the end of the year. So we need to allow them to do that. So if I'm talking to you, the beginning beekeeper, and I'm your mentor, we're going to get you all set up and not over expect what your bees might do. Now, they could produce a surplus the first year. They could. It just depends on weather and everything else. We had this incredibly dry spring here. We had 28 days of no rain, which is really unheard of in my neck of the woods because we are really wet here. But the funny part was people were like, wow, why is there so much nectar? Why is there so much honey on the hives? And the hives were really filling up quick. And here's what's missing, because in the spring, normally they're flying out and foraging, but then we get 3 or 4 days of rain. So they're inside consuming what they foraged. And of course, they're brooding up. So they're using all those carbohydrates. And so if you had scales on your hives, you would be gaining weight, losing weight. Well, all they did this spring was gain weight because they had no breaks. They had no rain days. So we would think that that would impact the floral resources, but it didn't for some reason. They had plenty. So we've seen a really rapid. So I haven't taken any honey. There's a lot of it out there. So I'm leaving it on. I have comb honey on. I have flow supers on. I have other supers. I've supered everything. My observation hives have swarmed out because they become honey bound. So new beekeeper. They need to have one deep brood box. Some people do single brood management. So one deep box, then they go to a queen excluder. I also recommend when someone's brand new to beekeeping that they might try starting out with a queen excluder if they plan to pull honey later. There's so many people giving advice to a brand new beekeeper. So we want to find out how the bees arrange their resources in the hive. Now, if you don't care about taking the honey off, you can leave those first 2 boxes for them to work freely, but start with 1 box. If you've got 8 out of 10 frames full, the next super goes on. If it's in your backyard, you can check them all the time. So you can tilt them, when they're heavy. And then when it gets to the 3rd box or above where I live, so this is where it comes time to reach out to the beekeepers that have experience in your area. What are their bees needed to get through winter there? Because we can't guarantee even the rest of the summer what your resources are going to be. So if you're trying to forecast that, I also tell new beekeepers, because I talk to people all over the country, go to beescape.org, put your address in there, and see if you have a dearth and when it is. That's an incredibly valuable tool for a new beekeeper to forecast a dearth. And to know that, because this also happens to people, I'm sure it's happened to us even at different times. We've had this great nectar flow and we've had a huge surplus. We pulled it all off. And then we had no rain or some weird dearth or strange weather that had these bees just consuming their resources for the next 2 to 3 weeks, which set them way back. So for me, I wait till the end of the year to pick what is that?
That was you got to see. That is show enough.
That's show enough. Okay. But anyway, for the new beekeeper, get your bees through their first year. Try to get your honey the next year.
There we go.
And leave them what they need. Your goal is not to have to feed them. And I haven't fed any of my hives this year. And even the new swarms that I put in this year, I'm not feeding. We're just testing that out, and that's working really well. They're moving right out and foraging within a couple of days. They're drawing out comb and everything with it's been my history that I put 1-to-1 sugar syrup on as soon as I hive a swarm, just right on top. We don't know what's coming. We want to give them a boost, but I thought, what if I ignore them? What if I don't do that? But I happen to be in an area that doesn't have a dearth in the summertime. And you're probably seeing a lot of clover right now, and guess what's about to bloom? Milkweed's about to bloom, and milkweed is a heavy nectar flow over here. So that's and the farm season has really extended this year too. I don't know if that's just where we are or what's going on, but
Our yard, when I walk out, it just it's loaded with the clover, and there are so many bees on it. It's just crazy.
Sounds like a swarm.
Exactly.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's been an interesting season. So yeah, that's all. That's good stuff.
And
now,
don't forget to gift all of your neighbors clover seed.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Now, so for this would you suggest to this new beekeeper to get one of these?
Yeah, that's a refractometer. So for people that don't know, those, by the way, are not very expensive. You can get a top of the line refractometer, and people are looking at, even in my own club, it's always funny to me when somebody goes, "What's a refractometer?" And I've seen them for years. So we have let people down if we don't bring this stuff up. So here's what I do for our club, and it's what I recommend for other bee groups. I get the inspector's calibrated MISCO refractometer, which is extremely accurate. And then we have a day when everybody brings in their analog refractometers like you have there. We bring in honey, and we use it as a calibration standard. So we take the MISCO out, and we find out that this honey is 16.3 or something. And now everybody samples that honey, puts it on their refractometer, and they calibrate because they've got the screw on top. You can calibrate that meter. The other thing is when you're using one of those, follow the instructions. A lot of people don't. Cover the whole window. You'll find out that if you only cover half the window or something, when you catch people doing that, they go, it's kind of hazy, it's kind of fuzzy, I can't see really where it is. You cover the whole window, you see a nice crisp blue and white line through there that shows the water percentage. So setting that up as a calibration standard, because we have to do it all at once, because the honey needs to be same temperature and everything else when you do this. The MISCO has its own temperature control built into it. So those standards are really good. So that's what we do. And then everybody gets a calibrated refractometer, and they're $25 to $40.
Yeah.
And once they're calibrated, the other thing is they stay in cal really good. I've never seen one go out. Have you?
Mine, I've had mine several years now, and it came calibrated. There were instructions on it on how just to check it.
Yeah.
So I did that just to make sure. Yep. And it was fine, and it's been I've never had to really mess with it. It's stayed pretty much spot on.
Yeah, and you don't need to know, right down to 0.001%.
Right.
Bruce, what do you use for refractometer?
I use that basic one, just the cheap one, and I just used it for a while, for years, and then I guess Mitchell has a pretty good video on how to calibrate it. I think he uses olive oil, virgin olive oil,
extra virgin olive oil. Yeah.
And if I remember right, I did that I think last year, and it works fine. I don't check a lot of mine. I've never had a lot of issues with any. I don't know. Now I'm going to knock on my desk here. I've never had one that's fermented on me. I do check it occasionally, but I haven't. I don't check it probably as often as I should. Yeah. Every time I've ever checked it, it's always been 17, 18%. It's been kind of in that range.
And so, so since we're talking to new beekeepers, and if you've got one and you think it's pretty close, fail safe and just go well under, 18. Sure. If you go 17.5, anything below 18 is safe, but you have to know what your calibration level is. You might be reading high. Hopefully, if it reads a little higher than what it actually is, that's your safety net right there.
The interesting thing down here is the tallow honey that we get is supposedly kind of a wet honey, but I just haven't had, if it's capped, or if, I even will do the shake test where you shake it real hard. If it doesn't come out, the nectar, if it's not capped, I have never had an issue with it that I know of. And I've sold a lot of honey, thousands of pounds over the years, but I usually check it some here or there. And I don't check, some people check it constantly. I've never done that.
It's not necessary, I don't think. In fact, when you're collecting batches of honey, you test each bucket or whatever. And we mentioned the flow hive earlier. I do it while I'm sitting right there. And then I get my toast, and then I get my pancakes, and then I get my. I've watched too many YouTubes. That's all.
That's right. That's if you're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
So Fred,
Yeah.
kind of going on Brian's, he talked about the refractometer, and of course,
Yep.
if you're, once again, back to the beekeeper thing, if
Yep.
they've got, they've determined they have enough honey to pull, whether it's the first year, the second year, whenever, what particular items would you recommend they get and approach that process? I know a lot of new beekeepers are concerned about cost, as well as, taking up space, and just, it's kind of intimidating at first. Of course, at the level I'm at, we just have to have way more. And over the years, I've spent a lot of money, but at first I just was real hesitant. We used the bee club's equipment, and I was real hesitant to purchase things.
Okay. Let's go grassroots and go right down the list. Okay. So what do you need? First of all, you've got the hive, you've got the bees, you've got the frames. The frames that you put in your hive that you're going to extract, you want them to have foundation. So I highly recommend Acorn, Premier, some other waxed plastic foundation. It's more durable, it's tougher, and it's going to put up with what you're going to put your frames through. So the other thing is your toolkit for extracting honey. So first of all, extracting honey, all that is removing, and I recommend removing it frame by frame. So you need something, you need an empty honey box with a cover, or you need a plastic tote that has a rack that you can build yourself that will hold the frames in there. Or if you want to do the expense, and I think it's worth it, the Hive Butler totes will hold 10 frames, mediums or deeps. And so you need something that when you're pulling them out of your boxes, you want to minimally smoke to get them out. And some people can just shake the bees off. If you're not comfortable frame by frame shaking bees off, and there's a technique, you drive it down with your thumbs and it rests on your forefingers here, and you thump them off and shake them into the hive. And then really quickly you put them in your box and cover it, because the game is to get them out. So, but the cheapest method is that. Now, if you want to spend some more money, get another piece of equipment, you need a bee escape that you would put underneath your super of honey, and you put that on the day before you're going to come back out and take honey out. And probably the best bee escape that I've found so far is made by Ciracell. That's the one that it's all vented. It works fantastic. And I found like maybe one bee in the super. Even at the end of the year, when I'm pulling and packing down, I use the bee escapes to clear the upper boxes before I haul them out for storage in winter. So those are worthy investments. Now, when it comes to the actual uncapping, do you need a Pierce hot uncapping knife? Well, if you've got money to spare, sure. But you need an uncapping tank. So uncapping tanks can run into quite a bit of money. So some of those are inexpensive. Some of them are pretty high end. But if we go back to the Hive Butler totes, they have some of those that are also modified. So you can use it as a tote, but you can also use it as your uncapping tank. And they had a really good quality valve on there. They've got a plastic, very coarse screen to catch your caps. And then you set that on top of another Hive Butler tote, and it drains down into there. So the next thing that I recommend for people is you want to catch your bits and pieces of wax and stuff when you're uncapping. And I'll talk about the tool for uncapping that's the cheapest. And the one I used for years is just the uncapping fork. I just go through and pull off the top. Some people just scratch the tops, but those are people that have a centrifugal extractor. I am pulling the caps completely off, and you can actually carve off. So, oh man, I didn't plan ahead. There are uncapping forks that will plane down the whole surface. So you can run a 200 micron filter. Some people use paint filters, can't vouch for it. It's just what some people use, and it's very inexpensive. They scrape everything off the frame right down to the foundation without scraping the actual plastic. And everything goes in. Now that's the crush and strain, which is probably the cheapest method ever. And you want to do it when it's nice and warm. So do this on a hot day, 85, 90 degrees. You want your honey and everything to be nice and hot when you do it. And you do this in a building separate from your apiary. Most people end up in the kitchen. There's a big fight about it. Hopefully you've gotten your significant other involved in bees, and they think it's great that everything's going to be sticky, including the sound of people walking across the floor in the kitchen. So, but those are the cheapest. These plastic forks, they're dirt cheap. Those filter bags are very inexpensive. And that's the crush and strain is probably the cheapest, and something that a beginner would probably use. If you belong to a bee club, here's my problem with bee clubs. I mean, I belong to one, But if you're going to buy a big centrifugal extractor and say, this is our club extractor, and all you do is sign up for it, everybody needs it at the same time.
Yeah.
We've all, we get 2 weeks of bad weather, and then we're looking ahead, and we've got 1 week when we can do an extraction over honey, right? Well, everybody wants it then. So you need kind of a backup plan. I finally made the leap, and, I don't use grandchild labor anymore. I have an electric, a Dedant, centrifugal extractor. That thing is but it's expensive. So if you want to incrementally decide that this is for you, that you want to expand, and then you need a place to store these empty frames. At the end of the year, you can put them out and have your bees clean them up during a dearth at the end of the year when they're keen on robbing one another. So then you put those empty frames out, let them clean them up, and then they go into storage if it's at the end of the year, or you can turn them around and put them right back in your hives and get maybe another load out of them. So, but you should know that when you use uncapping forks, or if you plane it all down and use the crush and strain method, that is the greatest demand on your bees as far as what they're going to have to do to overcome that and draw comb out again. So uncapping and having a manual centrifugal extractor, you can get them for under $200. And you just hand crank it and you can spin it out that way. There's some of them are as small as for 2 frames at a time. And I started ones. Yeah, go ahead.
I started with, it was either a 2 or 3 frame a manual, and I used it for a couple seasons, and the handle, I think I got it on eBay. The handle on it broke. The company did not sell replacement handles, so I hooked up my impact drill and would just spin it until it slipped one time, and I caught a nice welt on my arm, and I thought, well, let's just get a powered one. And then I ended up getting, I think it was like a 3 frame, an electric, and it worked. But like you, I've had to scale up just with the number of colonies that I have now. I purchased one last year from Hilco, and it just, I got a nice uncapping tank. I've got, that larger extractor now, and just that process, it's more of a seamless process, So, but this year I did add one product, and I recently purchased it. And you mentioned that product, and it's the Hive Butler. So this will be my first year using that. So I'm curious. I'm very curious.
I have to tell you, I'm a huge Hive Butler fan.
Yeah.
I have stacks of them.
I
buy the 4-packs because you also get the one with the screen top.
Yeah.
Because they're great for swarm transport.
Yeah.
But now I have the everything bee vac, so I don't need that anymore.
Well, see, you have.
So,
I should not have even doubted you about the simple comb, because in that room behind you there, you have everything.
I should have placed a bet on that, Brian.
I know. I would have owed the both of you a coffee.
But there's a tool that's even cheaper than the Hive Butler for uncapping that I used actually for years, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. You probably have it in your room there, Fred, is the comb capper. It's a little yellow, kind of like a plate that fits. It's got a groove in it for a 5-gallon bucket. You just set it down on the 5-gallon bucket, and then you just uncap, and it just falls into the cappings fall into the 5-gallon bucket.
All right.
And that's what we used. I had 2 of those back in the day before we, had to figure something out to be able to do more. But we would have 2 stations going in my garage down here, and we just uncap with those jerking a serrated knife. We used a serrated knife to uncap, and then we had either a pin roller or a fork to kind of get the rest of it off.
I do not. This pin roller that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's it.
I do not like it. Well, by the way, that's for if you're going to spin it too. So
you're right. Yeah, crush and strain. I've never really done that because I like to save my comb, which you mentioned before, that it's a lot more work for the bees. So, but yeah, the comb capper works. It just is, it's like you buy that thing and use a 5-gallon bucket, and I really liked it. We would put a paint strainer, a 5-gallon paint strainer, a 5-gallon bucket,
Yep.
clip that yellow comb capper thing on there, and just go to town. It
Yep.
really works well.
And you mentioned that there's because it sits on the 5-gallon bucket, which is really handy because that bucket's also your storage for all your tools. So when
It can be, yeah, it can be. Sure.
And at Hive Life, there was Cliff from Be Smart Designs.
Yeah.
He had that blue piece that sits over the half of the bucket, and he had an uncapping, kind of a blue plastic. Did you see it? Did you see it, Brian? It's just
it
just slides down and divides all the caps. It was really effective. I had never used it because I just thought, wow, that looks like it wouldn't work. So I didn't try it. That's on me, but it actually works really well. So,
this year I was only at Hive Life for Saturday.
Oh, okay.
So, and I drove down overnight on Friday, so I had only slept like an hour, and I mean, the day basically it was a blur.
Oh yeah, no, I do remember.
Yeah. There's two people. I know one person has just a quick minute, but I do want to bring on, and I don't know how much time you have, Fred. I know it gets to a certain time, and
I actually feel like I'm still awake.
Wow.
This is a late night for me, 9:01.
It is.
I have a butterfly net I have to go and collect off of the front of a hive because the bees are hiving themselves right now. I'm good.
You're good. Yeah. Let's see. I don't know. His connection looks like it's a little
Oh
sketchy.
my goodness.
What? He's in a restaurant?
Guys, how's it going?
Look at this guy. Who? Yeah. What? Greg, you look like you got stung.
Hi, Fred.
Yes.
Good to see you. Well, tonight we're down here in Columbia, Tennessee, with some Tennessee beekeepers having barbecue, talking about bees.
Awesome.
And say hey real quick. We've got
Where's Tim?
Barry Brown. Let's see.
Jody Pritchard.
You guys know this guy?
Dick Brickner. Steve McGee.
Janie McGee.
With their mouth full.
Man, you guys, there he is.
Oh my goodness, it's Tim.
Craig Midget and Clara.
Greg.
James Gobb.
So we're just down here having fun, eating barbecue and having a good time talking about bees. Sorry we couldn't make it tonight, but heard it was the only thing sweeter than talking about honey is getting together with other beekeepers and talking about honey. So we're doing the same thing here. So how's things going in your guys' neck of the woods?
Good. I guess, I mean, we didn't get the invite to go to Tennessee and eat barbecue,
Well, I tell you, I'd be happy to take you and your American Express out for dinner anytime.
Oh, that looks like a good time.
Well, hey, sorry we missed out tonight, but we just want to tune in real quickly. I think the place is closing here at 8 o'clock local time, but hope you guys are having a good chat. Looking forward to tuning in later, and we'll see you on the next one.
Awesome. We'll see you, Greg.
Hey, Greg.
See ya. See ya, Fred.
See you, Greg.
Oh, man. I do have someone else lined up and is a guest, and it is the last piece of beekeeping equipment that I purchased. You have mentioned their products a couple times tonight, Fred. So take a guess. What product are we talking about here?
Were you talking about Pierce equipment?
No.
Oh man.
No.
Are you talking about Be Smart Designs?
No.
Hive Butler.
No.
I don't know.
There you go.
Oh, Hive Butler?
There we go.
Okay.
So.
Oh, you're kidding.
And now she's muted. So this is her very first, I believe, YouTube live. So
well, I'm glad to see Tracy because I just talked up Hive Butler and didn't even.
I heard it.
Okay.
See? Yeah. No, I just met Tracy. We spoke in West Virginia, I believe it was.
Oh, okay. That was a great conference.
It was.
Fred was there.
Yeah. I enjoyed the Honey in the Hills just because size comparison, like to Hive Life.
All right.
I enjoyed the size of Honey in the Hills, and just the people there and just how organized that conference was amazing. It
I
truly
agree.
was amazing.
I agree.
You know?
I'm just now on the state board in Indiana, and I went back and said all these great things that I learned about how
Yeah.
they ran their conference that we could apply as well. So yeah, very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I'm thankful that I got to take some time and chatted with you just about your product. And I can't wait to use it. I mean, it's sitting there and I'm like so close to harvesting, and I've been just, looking at it like I got to use it. I got to use it. So for those that don't know about Hive Butler, and they've heard Fred, he's talking up this product. What is Hive Butler?
The Hive Butler is the result of a frustrated beginner beekeeper. I was a hobbyist beekeeper with 2 colonies and was super excited. And finally, the second year came when I would get some honey, and I pulled out that beautiful frame of honey. And I was like, I couldn't bring in a whole box at a time because I didn't have enough boxes. So I was just going to harvest a frame at a time as they were capped, and pulled it out and went, well, what do I put this in now? Do I put it in that dirty cooler from last weekend's fishing trip, or do I put it in that cheap, flimsy office tote, which is, of course, probably what we used? And then, of course, they fall together and they stick and they're just ripped open. And then beautiful honey is oozing into the bottom of my wheelbarrow or the bed of my truck. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe there wasn't something already. And so my husband and I just searched and searched and searched. We couldn't believe there wasn't something to hold your precious treasure until you're ready to extract it. And so then we just started the process of designing all the things that we needed it to do. We knew it wouldn't be cheap to buy one. But so our goal was then to make it really useful to you all year round. Honey harvest is only a couple weeks in a year, tops. So it couldn't be just for honey harvest. So that's where the ventilated lid came in, and of course, storing your comb in the off season. And the uncapping tank came later. Initially, it was just about the Hive Butler tote itself. I just did a big split yesterday, and we had 4 Hive Butlers sitting around us so that we could sort those frames as we were taking that hive apart. We had resource frames in one, brood frames in one, overflow in one, and then, of course, then we found the queen, and that was delightful. But we wanted the Hive Butler to make beekeeping easier and cleaner all the time. So...
Hey, Tracy, I actually have a Hive Butler I ordered last year just to try, and I've used it just a time or two. I've got over 100 colonies, and so obviously I can't order like hundreds of Hive Butlers, but maybe for those who aren't as familiar, I haven't used it much. I did use it to catch a swarm once, and I've used it just a little bit, but I just haven't really figured out in my situation how to use it very much. So maybe you could go through, you've mentioned a couple things already, maybe the different uses of it throughout the year for beekeepers, because I think there are some more ways I could use it in my operation. Of course, when I pull honey, I just pull boxes pull box after box after box, and we use fume boards and things like that. But maybe just kind of go through all the different. Fred's mentioned honey, and you've mentioned another making splits. But what are some different things you can use it for?
So for somebody with a large number of colonies, what I always think about is the whole queen thing, because it has a structure in it to hold the frame securely, no matter how I carry that box. I don't know. Do you guys move frames with grafted queen cells on them? We did have some queen rearers talk to us about dividing it so they could carry multiple queen, like 2 frame nukes in it and something like that. But so in the early spring, of course, in the winter, we're storing our drawn comb frames in it. When I learned that the old school method was to stack up your boxes and put pear moth up there on the top and then drape it so that all the insecticide fumes would come down and coat your honey frames all winter long. And then in the spring, I'm going to put those back on and the bees are going to fill it with honey and I'm going to eat out of that. I was like, yeah, that's not for me. So a really not sexy but important thing is storing your drawn comb frames in the off season. And I love that the Hive Butler is opaque, so I can see what I have stored out there. I know, oh, those are my deeps and those are my mediums. I know, oh, those are my ones that need new foundation. I can tell what I have. So then, of course, in the spring, you are able to, or I use wax foundation. I don't use plastic foundation. So those newly constructed wax foundation frames have to be protected until they get out there. You can't just lay them in a pile. well. They need to be taken care of. So I use it for that as well, taking my new frames out to the yard to swap out. Then swarm season, I have several really fun swarm collecting videos on my YouTube because I've been at the top of a 12-step ladder with woodenware and a ratchet strap and trying to hold on and carry everything balanced. So this, the Hive Butler just makes swarm collecting so much more fun. Drop that swarm in, snap the lid on. I can literally carry it down with one hand and hold on to the ladder with the other hand. So, and then transporting bees, live bees in your car. No more ratchet straps. It's easy to do. They stack securely on their lids, so you can stack them up if you need to. And then in the bee yard, I take one down, at least one for every hive inspection, every single one. I don't use a frame rack. I don't stand frames up on the ground. I've crunched, stepped on bees before. I don't like to do that. So if I have a Hive Butler right there, I pull out the second frame, it goes in the Hive Butler. Now I've made space. And obviously if I see a queen on a frame, she's going into a Hive Butler over in the shade. Don't have to worry about that. So then once we get to, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, wow. I mean, I never even thought of.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Because I haven't.
Okay, so then when we get to honey season, again, I'm still a hobbyist. I mean, I've been keeping bees. I've had a lot more than I have now, but as a technical hobbyist, I'm not going to extract immediately when I start pulling honey. So it's about my convenience. So I pick a day. Okay, everybody's schedule works. We're going to extract on this day. So then I start gathering my honey frames over time. So I have Hive Butlers stacked up full of honey frames. I can stack them 4 high. I've held honey frames for up to 2 weeks before I extracted. So it makes beekeeping more convenient for me and cleaner, obviously. The, honey is not oozing out everywhere. So then once the uncapping tank came on the scene, I will not take credit for that. My friend Valerie, who you see travel with me, Valerie's invented the Easy C. She and her husband helped us get the Hive Butler mold built. He was in that business. And so they were the ones that said, hey, the way those totes stack together, we should make an uncapping tank. And I was like, I had never had one. I had used the 5-gallon bucket or the bus tub, all of those things. So I was like, okay. So we started working on how we would make that. And we came up with the sieve and all of those things. So my first year using a Hive Butler uncapping tank or any uncapping tank was probably my 5th year of beekeeping. And when I was able to use that prop frame, you just spin your frame around on that stainless steel screw and go so quickly. I just couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, this is so much better. But the best part, well, I hate to brag, but the Hive Butler uncapping tank is the largest capacity uncapping tank for a hobbyist on the market.
Wow.
It holds 10 frames if you wanted it to, but the frames are being, the way we do it, I'm cutting and somebody's taking them away to the extractor. So we're just cutting and going as fast as we can. We go all day. Sometimes we even put 2 frames in one uncapping tank and 2 of us can go at it. And I'm a club leader, so I invite all the new beekeepers in my club that don't have equipment. I have a 20 frame extractor. We have a great day. But by far, to me, the most value of the Hive Butler uncapping tank is that bottom tote is only modified with a honey gate. So if you get a ventilated lid, you can use that bottom tote all year long to do all those bee chores that I just talked about. So you're not just getting an uncapping tank that's taking up space, sitting on your shelf, not doing anything all year round, except for the honey. So that's what I tell people. Yeah. So
I can add to that.
Please do.
I love, because Bruce, you would appreciate it when making splits or transporting queens with frames and brood to other hives instead of moving the hives themselves around, because that's what I do. I put that thing on the back of my golf cart and I go up, and as Tracy mentioned, the bottom of your frames, there's plenty of space there. We pull those frames and we've got that queen cell that's perfect. It's nice and big, but it sticks out over the edge and it hangs under the frame by quite a bit. The Hive Butler accommodates that. The other thing is the side walls of the tote are so smooth, the bees stay on the frames. So when we're doing inspections, we try to keep our frames in order, So instead of taking them out and hanging them off the side of your box, on the frame holders, we take them and put them right in the Hive Butler tote. What if it's a windy day and everything else? Anything that falls off that frame is in the tote and climbs right back onto it. So it's super convenient for that. So when I'm doing my long Langstroth hive inspections, we'll put 6, 7, 8 frames in a row in there. And because it keeps the bees together, we can cover them. They're calm and they're not stressed out while we're doing the rest of the inspection. So it really does have a lot of utility aside from that. And the other part that was really fun for me is for collecting swarms, because of the size of the tote, you can put frames in it for your bees to cling on if you want. But I come with 2 of them because I don't know what the swarm's going to be like. But if it's just on the end of a tree branch and there's that big swarm and people are expecting a show because neighbors always gather, they wonder what's going to happen. This is going to be really disappointing. Well, first, I do take their temperature with my finger. And then I just take my loppers and I clip it, drop it, and cover it and leave. Because I take the branch with it. I get permission. Can I clip this branch? Yeah, go ahead. Clip the branch. And then you go home and now you've got them in there. And I can almost get them to move into a hive right out of the tote just by tipping it up and setting it on another box at the hive entrance. They go in. I don't even shake them in. But I'm not saying everybody will have that experience, but there is a lot of utility there. You don't have to have, if you've got a big operation, but you're also queen rearing and things like that, or creating splits and dukes, it has a lot of utility for that.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I've only got one and I probably need more. So that's my next question, Tracy, is there a discount if you buy multiple, or is it just a straight up price? If I was to order, say 5 or 10, would there be a discount for that for people that want to do something like that?
There is a Fred Dunn discount. I will tell you that there's Fred 5 that you'll get 5% off. So
Fred 5.
And that is because Fred has been such a great supporter of the product from the very beginning that we've kept his discount code going because he's wonderful and brings it up all the time. And I really appreciate that. And what Fred was referencing earlier was the 5-pack. If you buy 5 Hive Butlers with the solid lids, then we threw in the ventilated lid for you for free. And that's what he has taken advantage of. Of course, if you meet me at a conference, I can give you a much better discount. But as far as online, we have 5% discounts, but we're also shipping it for free. So I can tell you what distributors we have around. Man Lake does not sell the uncapping tank. I saw someone ask that. They sell the Hive Butlers with the lids, the totes with the lids, but not the uncapping tank. So, but Bruce, what I wanted to say is, having a Hive Butler as a brand new thing is like any new tool. You just have to get used to using it and taking it with you. It feels kind of cumbersome at the beginning. I have this great big tote, but then when you get down there and you're, oh yeah, I'm putting that stuff in there. And I keep the lid upside down when I'm working in the bee yard so it doesn't clasp on, so I can get in and out of it really quickly unless I need to move them somewhere. And then once you realize that you can carry that tote by any handle with frames of bees in it and they're all secure, nothing happens. Doesn't matter how you carry it. It's so handy. And I did give you 1.5 inches below the bottom of a deep frame in case you have swarm cells on the bottom and you want to move those frames. When I called the engineer, I was like, hey, I remembered I need 1.5 inches below a deep frame. He was like, oh, that's going to cost you money. That's going to cost you money in the amount of plastic. It's going to cost you money in the weight for shipping it. It's going to cost you money in the size of the mold itself and the size of the press it has to run in. I was like, I know I'm going to want it. So.
I definitely probably should try it. I was just thinking, typically, like if I'm going through a bee yard with 20 pallets, or 20 hives, like 5 or 6 pallets or 10 pallets or whatever, what I usually do is, I kind of use almost like the Ian Stepler method where I just pull the frame out, set it on its side and just kind of stack the frames that way. But this would be a much better, I've had several cases where, I try to always, when I'm done, I'll look at that area where those frames were leaning and make sure the queen's not sitting there. Cause that queen she could be on the side of the box or she could be in the grass. And so there's no telling how many queens I've actually haven't seen that I've done that over the year. I mean, I don't know. There's just no way to know, but typically I'm pretty good and I see the queens pretty well. But, if this is the Hive Butler, obviously, if she's not on the frame, she's going to be in the bottom of that thing. Not many bees in the bottom, more than likely, so you'll see her. So I usually find them, but yeah, that is I've got to rethink it. I really haven't used it much because like I said, I did use it to catch a swarm one time or to try to catch a swarm with one time, and I just am so busy doing stuff. I haven't really thought that much about it, but I need to try to
I understand,
incorporate it.
and I tell people if you save 2 queens during the lifespan of the tote, you paid for it.
Sure.
Yeah.
At least in Indiana hobbyist queen prices. So
Yeah, I could see some wisdom in just setting it there and just instead of leaning them against the hive, just sticking them in there. Well, I mean, it isn't going to take any more time to do that. So,
and as a woman, it's lightweight. Again, I can carry it by any handle and it all works. But so let's say when my honey supers are very heavy, or so the easy thing to do is I can take out 5 of the super heavy honey frames and put them in the Hive Butler. I can put them in every other slot, and I can leave 5 in the box. So then I can move the box easily. Just makes it a little bit more manageable.
Sure. Well, that was a great breakdown. I appreciate that because I talked to you at the Hive Life I think 2 years ago and just never got back to get one. And then I actually ordered one online. I just went in a month or 2 later and just ordered one, and I got it, and I just haven't. One thing that I did, I had both lids, and so one lid was in my truck and it kind of got stuck behind stuff, and I had the one with so trying to manage, I've just got to figure it out. That's just, I've got to figure it out. And I guess you kind of leave the lid behind that you're not going to use that day. Like if you're going to be working the bees, you need to have the screened lid or the one with the opening.
Exactly. And honestly, so the solid lid is going to be for when you're pulling honey, because you don't want bees to following you, and you don't want the moisture being able to draw into the frames. So you're only going to use your solid lid in the winter for overwinter storage or for pulling and holding honey. The rest of the time, it's going to be the vent lid all the time.
So, Fred, you use yours all the time, huh? Use them for splits and for pulling honey and for all kinds of stuff, huh?
Well, splits because I can leave my hives in place. My old method of doing a split is bringing a nuke or whatever next to the hive I'm splitting from and doing that. And then I have to take that hive and put that away. Then I get another nuke. This way I can create several splits. I put 4 or 5 frames so I can have 2 in the same Hive Butler. They don't crisscross with each other. They stay on their own frames, and then I just go to the next hive and I unload them. And it is most convenient if you're teaching, because that's what I do a lot of. Surprise, but it's a great way to show new students how to do it. And you can hand that thing to somebody. And we also talk about in your car, run your frames parallel with your travel. I call it frame spanking. You don't want to turn them sideways. You hit your brakes and they bump into each other. But I use it for a lot of different things. And it's just, and the other thing is cleanup. I power wash them out, and we have a really clean piece of equipment. They show no signs of wear. So.
Hive Butler goes in a car, and it also, as I'm looking at the website, it also goes in your boat.
That is actually Bob Gruner, Valerie's husband, who helped the mold get built, and they collected a swarm on their lake. So that was a great picture. Couldn't pass it up.
That's awesome.
And he was wearing the Easy C on his.
Yeah, I'm sure he was.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm going to have to move on. So I want to thank you for having me on tonight.
Great to see you, Fred. Thank you.
Good to see you, Tracy. Yeah, great to see you, Bruce. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.
Fred, you take care. Thank you.
All right. Yep. Good night, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
So I've used the Hive Butler that I purchased. Now I got the one with both lids. I've used it one time. I guess I was thinking back when I was making my splits this year. I actually used it when I was making my splits instead of carrying the frames across the apiary.
Right.
I did use it. So, and I did enjoy it just because it took away.
It doesn't matter how you carry it. That's the thing. I saw a video the other day of somebody carrying brood frames across their apiary, one in each hand like this across, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad those days are over for me.
And I hadn't even thought. Now I have frame holders that my brother designed and then I 3D print, and I normally will use those if I remember them. But I hadn't even thought of just taking the tote down and just whenever I do my inspections, it's just my everyday item that I use.
So here's an idea. Valerie keeps her suit packed in her Hive Butler.
Yeah.
And then she brings it, it all comes out at one time. It's just a perfect carrying case for her suit and her tool and all that. I do have a bee bucket. It has all my equipment in it. And of course, I have lots of Hive Butlers. Anything that got broken in shipping, it belongs to me. So yeah, I just have them always ready to go, and I appreciate how much they do for me. It turned out even better than I could have hoped, honestly. I'm super happy that people like them.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of people use them. I've heard, a lot of people mention them when you see them.
I had a lady one time at a conference, and she was writing me a check, and she said, "Have you had anybody push back on the price?" And I said, "Actually, no, not really. Once I explain that it can work for you all year round." And she's writing fiercely, and she goes, "Well, if they do, ask if their husbands golf." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's a good way to talk about that." So that was fun.
Yeah, I see. I should just leave your website up because I see there's a comment here. It says no drain on the uncapping tank, but
drain. A gate. Yeah, it has a honey gate.
I just
speaking of that, you mentioned how that is interchangeable with.
So that bottom coat. The only modification we've done to it is put that hole and put that, and the gate is actually super removable. Sometimes the gate is an asset to you if you're collecting a swarm and you're dropping it in on frames. You can put the lid on, then open the gate, and the stragglers can go in through the gate. If you don't want to drag your gate around, or you're worried about it getting banged up, it's a super easy hex nut. Open and remove it. You put duct tape on both sides so bees don't get stuck in there, or you can put the gate on inside out. I mean, lots of options.
That's excellent.
Cool stuff.
Man.
So, Bruce, we do, if you're buying an uncapping tank, we do discount the ventilated lid because I want you to have it. I want you to have the availability, and the vent lid is what allows the Hive Butler to work for you, any Hive Butler to work for you throughout the year. So I've always discounted the vent lid. That's why we call the ST. That's the tote with both lids for storage and transport. We always discounted that second lid because we wanted people to buy it and then get the use out of it. So the price for the ST is a discounted price, and from buying the pieces all separately. And then if you add the ventilated lid when you buy an uncapping tank, you'll automatically get a discount on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense not to have both lids. It makes no sense at all.
Yeah. I can honestly see myself getting another one or two of these.
Tracy, it was worth coming on to get some. You probably got some sales tonight through this.
Well, I really appreciate your time, you guys. And my husband, I mean, again, we knew it wasn't going to be a cheap thing to buy, but he's always said to me, if a tool works hard for you or it makes your life easier, then it's worth the investment. And but I definitely tell people it should never be sitting empty in your garage doing nothing. It can be doing something for you all the time, and it should be.
I have now. Whenever I go over and I'm going to do my inspections, I have a tool bag that I actually have set up with all 5 of my, marking pens. I've got my one-handed queen catcher, some clips, some hive tools, everything. It's all in this little bag. And then I've got hanging up, in the same room, but on a hook, my jacket.
Right.
I can take everything and put it in there, and all I have to do is grab my tote.
Yep. And then
I had never even thought of that.
Well, I'm glad we could solve that.
Oh man,
Brian, you gotta buy a 5-pack, Brian.
I know.
Well, you guys, there you go. Of course.
Yeah. Wow.
And then I would encourage you to look into the Easy C.
So I saw them at Hive Life,
right?
And I just am. I don't know. I'm not entirely sold. If I could use one, like when I'm doing my inspections,
right,
and then judge it from like that round of inspections, then maybe, I just don't know. I've seen them though. I've seen them and they are slick.
I do appreciate it. And so I wore my daughter's suit yesterday to do that split that I was talking about. It was a great big hive. I wore my daughter's suit, and it was one of those very new ventilated suits that has the micro mesh veil. So much, much tinier, altogether different from my old school ventilated suit. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll just wear this. It doesn't have my Easy C in it. That's in my regular suit. And sure enough, we're going through all those frames. And then we have that haze here from the smoke. And so I'm looking for queens. I was like, why of all days did I not wear my veil that had the Easy C in it? So you can see I'm getting to that age that I need those little glasses every now and then. And so I will tell you that ever since I put the Easy C in, I see queens. Not only do I see the queen sooner, but I've never seen teeny tiny larvae. I've always been able to see the pearl larvae, but now I can see the horseshoes and the eggs. So
Interesting.
It's a nice gadget.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. But I'm also lucky enough to have 2 veils for my suit. So if I ever want to switch off, I can.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. That's good stuff. Yeah. Bruce, I can see myself definitely getting in touch with Hive Butler.
Bruce, make sure if you're going to order more, you use the Fred 5 discount.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fred 5.
Fred 5.
Yeah. I'll probably do that.
I might be in touch. We'll see.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you for taking time out of your day. And I know you had your bee meeting and you had to hurry out of there. And
I actually missed my bee meeting because I was unloading a semi full of Hive Butlers, believe it or not, which was super exciting.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
My husband is injured, so I was the truck unloader tonight. So.
Oh, wow. Well, hopefully your husband heals up and everything's okay.
Well, thank you. Thanks you guys for having me. Thanks for giving me a great platform and being able to talk Hive Butler. I always love listening to Fred. I appreciate meeting you guys again.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
thanks so much. Yeah. We'll talk again.
All right. Anytime.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bruce, I have no idea why, like, some of the uses that she went through, I had not even crossed my mind.
Yeah, I had it in my truck for a while and I used it to catch a swarm with, like I say, and I've put some stuff in it, but I just never really, I'm always doing so much. Like I've got so many things going at once and I just never really thought about all those uses either. So I need to pull that thing out and see if I can try to use it a little bit and see what I think.
I probably will. I'll probably do exactly what she said. And I'm just going to put my little bag that I have. I know people have probably seen it in my videos. I probably will not get rid of that bag. And I think there's actually a couple other people have bought that same bag. I got it off of Amazon. It's a little Carhartt bag. It's a tool bag. But it works perfect because the different pockets on it can fit your pens. It fits inside of it. It can fit, your queen catchers and whatever it is. But I could put that right in that tote, my jacket, gloves.
Yeah.
Everything is just right there. And I just grabbed my smoker and fuel and walked down. Yeah.
Yeah. I've just got all my stuff, like my smoker and my hive tools in a nuke box. And I've got my pine straw to start my smoker and then my pellets in, different containers. And then I've got my bee suit just laying in the backseat of my truck. And so, yeah, I've almost with the fuel for I guess you could have another tote for the fuel for your smoke. There's so many reasons you can do it, but it is a little bit cost prohibitive in a way. I can't spend thousands of dollars on Hive Butlers.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But it is a handy tool, and I could definitely see myself using 2 or 3, even 4 of them, because when you're doing splits, like she says, you can break out the honey and the food in one bucket in one box, and in one tote you can put the brood in another one, and you could just break it out. If you find the queen, you could put her in one, so you can kind of figure out different reasons for it. But I usually just bring my nuke over by my hive and I break out my splits and just put the bees right into that nuke. But if it works like Fred says, where you can just set the bees down in there and leave an empty space in the middle, like take 4 frames and a little separation between them, and you can just take them over to the nukes instead of having to bring the nukes over to you. That would be more convenient. Just carry it over and just transfer the frames over. So it definitely, it's something to think about. I'm gonna try to remember to pull it out. Start playing with it a little bit.
I did that this year when I was doing my splits, because from my front row, if you're facing where my colonies were on the far left, I had a colony that I was that I was pulling splits from, and I was moving them where I had those resource. My double nukes were set up on the far right, so I had to walk them across. And I was sitting there, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to carry these frames. I don't know, it was 40 or 50 feet. And I walked in and I grabbed that tote, and literally, I mean, they do hold them exceptionally well.
Oh yeah, it's designed for that.
Yeah,
it's a good item. I've just never really, you get
yeah,
after doing things for so long, you just kind of
right.
you kind of get in the habit of doing it the way you've always done it, and I'm pretty efficient the way I do it, so it's just kind of hard. I mean, it's just having to readapt. But anyway, I know our topic tonight was honey, and we've talked about honey some, but I'm not sure what else we need to talk about. I guess if there are any questions anyone may have on here about honey, or if you have any, you can put in the comments ways that you may have used the Hive Butler in your operation, or suggestions or ideas of how to use it. Go ahead and throw them down there. It'd be great. And I can definitely see the wisdom of it. Like if you're a hobbyist with just a few, you just haven't, you don't have a lot of equipment, like you can't put the frames over. You're doing one frame at a time. You can't put the frames over. I can see how it could be an advantage harvesting hay for all the ways that she talked about. But, Fred obviously uses it. He talked about that we were talking about honey, and then he talked about the Hive Butler. And so, but what other things should we discuss about honey actually? I don't know if you got any questions about honey, we can try to answer them.
If there's any questions,
just throw them out there. And if you put them in all caps, it's easy for us to see them. Or if you super chat or super sticker, whatever, it just pops so we can see it easier. But just give us any questions you might have.
While we're waiting for that, I do want to say thank you to Matt. Thank you, Lisa, David. Thank you. And I always got to say thumbs up there, because if you look on his shoulder is one of my little varroa mites that Lisa is going to get me, because I'm looking right over there, and her box with her varroa mite is still sitting over there. So, and Bruce, thank you also. Yes, you're going to have to do that, buddy.
There've already been a couple of questions real quick. Let's see.
I did see what John said.
Fume board, Paul Hives. Paul, I think he says best fume board spray. There are some absolutely nasty fume board sprays out there, bee repellents, and for some reason, a lot of the commercial folks around here they think they have to use those. I'm not sure why. I think I don't know if it's a badge of honor or what, but they smell really bad. But I use Honeybee Gone. It's from Blythewood Bee Products. It's the same. A company that makes Swarm Commander, and I have used those two products pretty much religiously, and I've been loyal to those products for years. And the Honeybee Gone is very effective. You spray it on there, and the bees hate it, but it doesn't smell bad to humans. It's just it has kind of a, I don't know if it's an almond smell or what is it smell. To me, it's a pleasant smell, but the bees absolutely hate it. And so now I do soak my fume boards pretty good. David Lewis also says fume board versus blower. It can get wild with a blower. If you got a lot of bees, especially if they're in a dearth, if they're a little bit robby, or if they're a little bit feisty, it can get just crazy with a blower. I have done that before, if that's all you use. But what we do, and I've got a video coming out tomorrow evening of our honey harvest, is we typically, I have used, Fred mentioned bee escapes. I use those, and I actually prefer bee escapes over everything. But with the number of colonies I have, you got to take 2 trips out there, one to place the bee escapes and one to, if you place bee escapes though, man, when you pull those honey boxes off, it's just like you literally just take them off and set them in the truck or the trailer or whatever, because there are no bees. Yeah. They're gone. And you may have a few in there, and you can use a blower to get those last few out. Same thing with the fume board though. If you use a fume board, give it time to clear. If they're not clearing very well, spray some more Honeybee Gone on there and just give them enough time, and they'll usually clear pretty well. But you can tip the box on the end and then use the blower and spray the rest of them out if you're kind of in a hurry, and it's very effective. I will tell you this, Brian Lee, who comes on our chats in the comments, he brought a little, I don't know what it is. It was a DeWalt blower. It's a little handheld blower, small, but it had a small nozzle on it, and that thing worked way more effective than my big leaf blower did. So If you have one of those, it's fine. But I've used a leaf blower for years. It works fine. But you just tip it up and you just get the rest of the bees out. The fume board doesn't. If you're in a hurry, now if you just wait long enough, typically most of the bees will get out of there anyway. So I've tried all kinds of things. I've tried bumping bees down a frame at a time. I've tried bee escapes. I've tried fume boards, and I've tried just simply blowing them. And I found that the combination, what we've used the last couple of years that's been most effective for us is the fume board plus the blower for the straggler bees. Works well.
I have never used a fume board. I've always just, I'll typically have an extra super sitting to the side, and I go frame by frame.
Yeah.
You know, I shake them off and just set them over, shake it, set them over. And then when that box is filled, I walk it up to my honey building.
Yep.
And, you know,
that's God, there's so many questions coming in now. Honey rustler is let's see, Bob Walker. I've smelled his honey rustler. I've never used it. I use the Swarm Commander, but it smells just like Swarm Commander, to be honest. I think it's a very similar product.
You know, that question there from Redfish, if there's darker spring honey this year, when you harvested yours, as you know, and I know every year it varies a little bit, but what your crop that you got, how was it? Was it
first of all, it was actually probably on average lighter than it usually is. Now the spring honey here is typically really light, and the tallow is a little bit darker. But most of our honey this year was a little bit lighter than usual, I would say. Redfish, remind me where you're from. I think you've told me before, but I can't remember. Are you from down this way, or are you from a different part of the country? Just let us know. So that it depends on where you're from. But I have also heard people saying, like I've seen people posting, I think from Texas, that have been harvesting honey, and it's almost like a red color or a dark, almost like a molasses color, where it usually isn't quite like that. So I don't know. I think so. I have seen some people saying that their honey is a little bit darker this year, and I'm not sure why that is. Maybe just North Alabama. Yeah. You got different flowers up there than we do down here, I think, but just kind of talk to your friends around. I think it just depends on, Sarah's Happy Hives says hers is darker. I don't know what all that is. Just, I don't know if it's different flowers or blooming, stronger than they have in the past. And the typical ones that bloom stronger are not as strong. And so maybe that's what it is, or maybe there's just a little something different with the water content, or I have no idea. I don't know if the smoke affects the honey up there where you guys are at as far as the color appearance of it. I really don't know, but that's a great question. My honey, if anything this year, I think overall was a little bit lighter, which I was surprised by because we didn't get much of a spring flow. So, Grammy's on here. Lisa's on here. She harvested some this past week, and maybe she could weigh in on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh.
Russell just asked if I've harvested any yet, and I could. I've probably got, I don't know, 12 or 14 supers that are capped out now. So, and I don't know how, man, I guess that'll be an okay harvest for me for a spring. So, yeah. Yeah,
you're looking at, if you're looking at an average of probably a 5-gallon bucket per every 2 boxes, I would guess, if they're packed out nice. So,
yeah,
that's pretty good. That's a pretty good amount of honey there, Brian.
Yeah. Well, last year was the most that I ever got, and that was 500 pounds for the season. So that'd be 7 buckets already. That's almost 400 pounds.
Mm-hmm. How much you got last year? 500?
500. Oh, boy. Yeah. Yeah. And we, like last year I got 150 or so from fall. So in the spring, I got around 320 or so in there. So I'll be over. Yeah. Yeah. And we're still going though. I mean, like right now, that's the only reason why I haven't started yet is because literally when you walk out into my yard, I mean, there are probably, I'd say 200 to 300 honeybees on clover flowers. I walk out in the yard and I'm just looking down. I don't look straight ahead. I just look down now because there's so many bees, flying around. It's crazy. So I'm giving them giving them the time. But I should harvest here soon, and then throw my wet supers back on, let them clean them up. I should.
Yeah. It's so interesting, man. The beekeeping thing, that one thing I like about it is that every year the honey's a little different. Every year the bees respond. The weather's different. The problems are different every year. Things are just different, and that really kind of keeps you on your toes. And as you develop as a beekeeper and become more experienced, and I've got a long ways to go, but you just learn how to manage different problems and situations. You learn not to get too worried about certain things that maybe you got worried about before. And you also learn there's so many ways to do things. Just for example, in the past, 2 to 3 weeks, I've actually done 2 honey harvests. For those of you who have watched the channel, that I did a product review on 2 Vivor extractors, the manual hand crank extractor and the electric extractor. And so what I did that day was, I think a day or 2 before, I went out and I pulled all my backyard honey. I think it was 8 medium boxes and 6 deep frames that I pulled. I wanted to just try both. I've never used a Vivor extractor before. Honestly, wasn't super excited to do the review, but I committed to it. So I did it just to be, upfront and honest here. But, we got five 25 gallons out of just my backyard hives back here. That's that, 5 times 300 pounds. And just off the backyard bees back here, which I've actually moved those hives out to a different spot because I've got a little grandson playing in the backyard, and those hives weren't far from the back door. But anyway, so that was kind of old school. If you watch that video, that's how I used to do it. We had a little 3-frame hand crank extractor we used for years. That worked well. We did hundreds, if not thousands of pounds with that thing. And we used the comb capper in the 5-gallon bucket. And I kind of went back old school with that video and showed how I did it, but while I reviewed those 2 extractors. And then 2 weekends ago, the day before Father's Day, we went over and we did our bigger honey harvest for the year. Ended up with about 55 buckets of my honey, I think, and then 9 for Honey Hill Farm, which I managed their hives for them. And we used our bigger process for that down at Rusty's place, down at Rancam Bee Ranch in Hartford, Alabama. And, that's a sideliner operation. Honestly, we had, a crew. I think Lisa I'm not sure how many we had, 7, 8, 9 people there. And it took us all day to do that. And we cranked it out pretty good. And so, there's just so many ways to do as you grow, use different things. I will tell you this, for those on here who are looking at purchasing their first extractor, there's nothing wrong with a hand crank extractor, but I would recommend that you look at them, look at the reviews, and that you don't be afraid to spend a little bit more money on those. Maybe the old school 3-frame manual extractor that I had, it had like a braking system, almost like a bicycle, where you could spin it and then, it would just, you let go and it would hang, or you could gently push back on it and it would slow the thing down. It would stop it. And so today I had someone ask me about that, actually just emailed me just out of the blue. I don't even know if she knows I have a YouTube channel, but just a friend of a friend said, I want to know, what I want a manual and what do I do? And I said, well, I recommend it. I know that Lyson has a really nice one. I found that one. I kind of looked at it. It's got the braking system, and Lyson has one. I think all the bigger companies have them. They're around $300 or $400. The one that I looked at was, I think, $345 at Better Bee for the Lyson. Hilco's got one. I think it's 6-frame hand crank maybe, but it's a little more expensive because it's a bit more frames, and it's obviously heavy duty. But if you just have 1 box to harvest, just get whatever you want, the cheap thing. But if you're going to harvest a significant amount of honey, if you plan on doing it for several years and maybe expanding a little bit, just go ahead and invest a little bit of money and get you something that's going to last you a while. Now, I will say that the Vivor, if you watch my video, the Vivor electric extractor, it's a pretty good little machine. I don't know how long it'll last, but man, it spun the honey out really good. And Lisa actually borrowed it from me and used it last week. And I don't know, maybe Lisa will have a video coming out, but it worked well. But once again, if you want something that you can be sure is going to last you for year after year after year, don't be afraid to spend a little money. If you want to get something just kind of get you going for a couple of years, any of them are probably good. But if you're going to keep bees for a long time, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and invest in something that's going to last for, ongoing. And then if you get a good quality product, a heavier duty product, if you do increase your hive count, like Brian did,
Mhm.
You know, if you want to keep that smaller one around to let people borrow, or just to have it for a quick little harvest, you can.
Mhm.
Or you can sell it. You can sell it to somebody in the bee club, or give it away to somebody, or provide that service if it's a good heavy duty product.
Mhm. I still have both of those other extractors. I've got the manual, and I have that little powered one. Um, and like, if you're just starting and you only have 2 colonies or whatever, a couple colonies, you can do what I did, and it is a considerable amount of money if you want to go up to some of these larger electric extractors. Um, you could easily, though, if you get a small manual one, and I know Bruce, you used one for years.
Yes, we do.
um, you could take it, and then if you set aside some of those honey profits, that that builds up fast,
It sure
you
does.
know. And so, and last year I saw that just with the harvest that I got last year. um, it built up so fast, and I thought, man, I'm going to get a new extractor. And then with that new extractor, I mean, it was just,
Makes a
boom.
difference.
I mean, if oh yeah, it was a huge difference, because if I would have still had like that little 3 frame powered, and I harvested what I
It
did
takes
last year,
forever. It takes forever.
it would have taken me an entire weekend, where I
Yeah.
went over and I did the whole complete harvest myself. That's pulling the supers, spinning them and putting them back on the colonies. And I was like 8 hours. So it
Yeah.
adds up. But I mean, if you're just starting, I mean,
I'll say this too. That little extractor I used for that video, it worked, but it took literally all afternoon to extract 8 boxes plus 6 deep frames. It just took forever because it's just, I mean, it was aggravating to me now because I'm used to going so much faster. We harvested 100 and what Lisa's on here, 125, 130 boxes in a day, supers using our other system. And
wow.
we weren't as efficient as we were last year. Last year we did 92 in a day of buckets and about 166 boxes in a day with our setup down in Hartford. And so you can imagine what that's like when you're used to going fast, and then you get kind of, you kind of get spoiled a little bit at the speed, but
Mhm.
we got it done and it worked. But I will
Yeah.
say this, Brian, when it comes to honey extraction equipment, when it comes to any equipment, and I know people are just getting started, maybe have a hive or two, and I was the same way. The very first year, I think I got a little honey, I can't even remember, out of a cutout or something a guy helped me with, and I'm like, I don't know if my hives even produced any that first year. Maybe they did just a little bit, but I just crushed and strained it, and that is what Fred
Mhm.
talked about, and it works. The only
Yeah.
problem with that is when you do that, you're destroying that comb. If you
Mhm.
want honey next year, they got to rebuild that comb. And so comb is like gold in the beekeeping industry. If you want to make honey, if you can keep that comb in
Mhm.
place, if you can cut the cappings off and keep that comb intact, they can fill it up so much faster.
Mhm.
And so comb in the beekeeping world is like gold if you're a honey producer.
Mhm.
But yeah, but then you just kind of move up. You kind of get you can rent the extractor from the bee club, or you can buy your own small little inexpensive extractor. But I've never regretted, even once, the more expensive items I've bought. Every single time it has made my life so much easier. And so if you're looking at doing it for the long term, don't hesitate to go ahead and spend, if you're going to spend, like I say, if you want a hand crank extractor, a heavy duty one, the one I talked about from Lice, and if you spend $345 on that, or you get the little Vivor one for $172, you think about, that's only, depending on what the price may be, 10 or 20, 10 or 15 bottles of honey that you're going to sell
Yeah.
for, it's not much that difference. But I do believe, first of all, you'll be happier with the one that has the better mechanism to spin, and
Mhm.
it'll last longer. So, I kind of like the little Vivor power one, the electric one. It was pretty good. Like I
Mhm.
say, Lisa used it. I don't know how durable it is, but it did a great job with the honey. So I'm not trying
Mhm.
to badmouth them or their products, but I just know that I've never regretted buying a higher quality product.
Mhm.
So,
Well, I mean, I guess it boils down to you get what
pay for.
you pay for. Yeah.
That's right.
But I mean, you have to look at the scale though too. So I guess that Vivor, I guess, I mean, thinking about it, if you're a hobbyist and you have a handful of colonies, I mean, I think it would work.
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
You just got to be careful. Now, I may have gotten mine. The rack was too high, so the frames were you had to get them there just right for them not to hit the top, and so maybe I got one that was offset a little bit, because I've heard people say that they work fine, and so mine was just off a little bit. But hey, there's a question up here about which. Go to David's Bee Farm. There's a couple of questions very similar. John Hatch asked a similar question, and then David's Bee Farm asked this question. Can you put that question about plastic versus natural comb?
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Hey, so that it was at 8:51.
There we go.
There it is. So I'll take this one first. In honey frames, do you? Yeah, that's David. He's the guy who went down to Bay Minette. That's a picture of us over there on the side.
Oh wow!
And I think that was his uncle. And I went and bought a bunch of mediums from them. His uncle was a commercial beekeeper down in the Mobile area. Bay Minette is close to Mobile, Alabama. And sold me. I bought good grief, what did we buy? Shoot, 300 something. I bought a bunch of frames, like 300 or 400 frame or boxes or something like that, and they have frames in them. But David asked this. He says, in honey frames, do you like plastic foundation or natural comb with wire support? Another, and then up above it said wax foundation. John Hatch asked if plastic foundations or wax. I started off in beekeeping. My mentor originally said you need to use wax foundation. This was 10 years ago. And so that's what I used at first, wax foundation with wires in it. And it worked okay. I did a lot of beekeeping that way for the first few years. But I found that the bees will tend to, maybe in a dearth, or if they need it, they'll tend to eat the wax around the edges, and they don't always draw it out very well. I guess they don't always draw anything out really well all the time, but I got to where I just didn't care for it. And then David asked about natural comb. Those frames I got from him, his uncle really didn't believe in plastic foundation. And so all of his were, I think a lot of them have wire in it maybe, but a lot of it was just natural comb where the bees filled it in. I use plastic foundation pretty much exclusively now. It's just so much more durable. Like in those extractors, sometimes that natural comb, if it's fresh, it'll blow out. Now, if it's older, it works fine. Sometimes it'll blow out, but I just prefer the plastic foundation. If it's heavily waxed, if it's well waxed, they draw it out almost, to me, better than they do wax foundation now. But it's got to be waxed properly. If it's just straight up plastic, or if it's not waxed good, they don't like to draw it out. They'll draw it out all wonky, and so it's a pain in the tail. And I don't know if back when his uncle tried the plastic foundation, if they waxed it back then, if they waxed it like they do now. But now most companies have a heavy wax you can get. And that's the key with that plastic foundation. I think they all work pretty well if they have a good coat of wax on them. That's kind of my experience anyway.
I do the same. I always use plastic. I've a handful of times I've used wax, just wax foundation with the wires. And I always ended up running into problems. So one summer it got really, really hot, and I actually had a couple of them sag down.
Yeah.
And then I opened it up, and I took a look down, and you could see all that comb, and it just was a mess. And I ended up having to pull, it was like 3 frames out as one piece, because it was a disaster. And I looked, and when I realized what happened, I just yanked it all. And, and the only reason why I tried using wax foundation is my mom liked to do things more natural. Like, she wanted just no foundation at all. She wanted, the bees to build out their own comb. And I was always towards plastic, and she's, you're putting all that plastic and everything. And, so I've always I think whoever spoke to me originally about foundation really drilled into my head, just use plastic. So, and that's what I've done ever since. And, it's plastic foundation. It's worked out really well for me. I mean, like Bruce said, I mean, I use mainly the Premier now, and their frames are, I mean, their foundation is it's heavy waxed. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I personally, and I'm just going to say this straight up, my favorite foundation, I know people use Acorn, they use Premier, they use all different, Man Lake stuff, Right Sail. My favorite foundation, my favorite frames to this point, and a lot of people are a little bit, they'll disagree with me on this. I love the Pureco triple wax frames and foundation, or I like the platinum. I like the one piece solid plastic frames.
Yeah.
I mean, I've used different things. You see in my videos, there's all different kinds of frames in there.
Yeah.
They do fine on all of them if they're drawn out good, but for the price, man, you just about can't beat it. They're so much less expensive than the wooden frames. And there probably are some advantages to the wooden frames, but I've just, for years and years and years, I use the black Pureco triple wax foundation.
I've
I just like it. I just really like it. And the bees will jump on that stuff so fast. And the same thing with the Premier. I mean, if it's heavily waxed, if it's, the heavy, actually I got is it called extra heavy wax? It's kind of the next to top. They do have a triple wax as well. I got the next to top. I got the extra heavy wax. And they do pretty darn good with it. But I've just had the best. One thing, and I don't know if it's going to be, everybody has an opinion. Once again, you ask 5 questions to beekeepers, you get 10 different answers. That's the quote, right? That's what I say. Most people say something similar. So take this with a grain of salt. But, if I have a hive that has nothing but wooden frames in it, I get hive beetles. If I have a hive that has nothing but black plastic frames in it, I get hive beetles. And so people will say the beetles hide in the little ridges on those black frames because there's like a little space there that the bees can't get to.
Right.
And I do believe that's true to some extent. But the bees will propolize a lot of that sometimes, and they may just trap them in there. I'm not sure. It's almost like it's a place for beetles to hide, but it's also a place for bees to keep them corralled. And so I haven't noticed a huge difference. Some people just hate the plastic foundation for that reason, but I don't, or the plastic frames, but I personally, whatever I have, if it's heavily waxed and if the bees draw it out, I am not super picky with that. I've never used Acorn. I know that there was some, at one time it was one company and there was a little dispute there. And I've always just used Pureco, and I think it's in a lot of ways kind of the same thing. And so that's just my experience, but everybody's got their own opinion, and not trying to open up a debate. But, I think the biggest thing, once again, is if you're going to use the plastic foundation or plastic frames, make sure they're heavily waxed and you'll be in good shape, whatever the company you use. There's all kinds of questions coming in now. Let's see, Brad at Bee Blessing Farm. Bruce, do they burr up the top bars of the plastic frames? That is something they do. Yes, they do. They like to build wax on the top of them, between the frames, between the boxes. I have noticed they do that. They do that some on all the frames, but it does seem like that might be a little worse with the plastic ones, possibly. I just scrape it off and use it, melt it down and use it for beeswax, though. If they burr it up, I scrape it off. You got some, because that stuff, if you scrape it up pretty quick, it's just like white wax. It's almost as nice as this, kind of like cappings. It's a beautiful wax. So,
I was looking up the price of those frames there real quick, and it's
which ones?
Those plastic ones.
Well, see, I order them by the pallet, so
they're
still cheaper probably in single ones, but if you order them by the pallet,
they are.
They're way cheaper.
Yeah. There were a lot of questions.
I guess everything is cheaper when you order it by the pallet. So
I would.
And as far as honey goes, man, they tolerate the beating you take when you harvest. I mean, they seem to just do well. Golly, see if there's more questions here.
Yeah,
we're getting about to the end of our time, I think, here, but
2 hours. Yeah.
Let's see.
I don't see any others.
Yeah, I think that's mainly it.
Yeah. Well,
so just to kind of follow it real quick with my honey situation. I think if you were on early, we may have discussed it. I'm not sure if we did or not, but it seems like typically by this time of the year here, we're done with honey basically for the summer. This year, Rusty down there that we harvested with, he said his bees are not touching the cappings they're not touching anything that's out there. So there's a flow coming in from somewhere. He's got bees like building comb and doing things now. So have no idea where it's coming from. I don't see anything blooming really, just no idea. And so I haven't really been in mine. Some of my bees are not far from his down there, a few miles away. I think some of my bees in certain areas are done just because there's nothing around, but maybe we're going to look back in about a month and see if there's any more to pull. I'm not going to aggressively do that if they really don't have anything to spare, because I am looking at maybe making some splits and introducing some queens and things here pretty soon. So I'm thinking I'm going to do that. And so I don't know if we're going to pull any more honey or not. We may just use that honey or food for our splits, or, you know, get them through winter, but we'll see in about a month. If we do have just a little bit to pull, he's going to probably have some. I may or may not have. It won't be much. It won't be anything like what we pulled a couple of weeks ago. So that's kind of where we're at. And as far as the channel goes, I'll just kind of go ahead and summarize here, Brian, and kind of wrap it up on my end.
Sure. Yeah.
As far as my channel goes, to be truthful, I'm backing off a little bit on my frequency of posting and uploading videos. I was posting 2 to 3 a week, and it was just killing me. I was just getting really burnt out, and you know, because I don't want to produce junk, and it's still not my videos still not at the standard I want them to be at. But I hope that they're a quality of video that people enjoy. I think people do, but I just was posting, you know, 2 and 3 videos a week, and it was just really wearing me out. And so I decided I'm going to kind of back off on the frequency a little bit, and I'm not going to film everything I do. I used to feel like I had to film everything I was doing out there, and just kind of focus in on a few things and maybe make fewer videos that are more quality, maybe a little bit longer. Like this video that's coming out tomorrow night, instead of breaking it up into a you know, we pulled the honey, a honey removal video, and then a honey extraction video. I just put it all into one video. So the video is a little bit longer, but it's really 2 videos in one. And that way people can see the whole process at one time instead of having to wait for that second video. And I think it's a good video. I hope you all like it. I hope you watch it. But so my strategy is a little different now. I am planning on still doing some interviews or some live chats here or there. Of course, StreamTeam is obviously a priority, but in my own situation, it just takes, you know, when I do those interviews, like the intentional beekeeping interviews, I do go back and edit those. And, you know, when you're talking about a video that's an hour and 10 minutes long, you know, if you go through and edit that, and I just try to cut out the little space, I try to make it flow better. I don't really cut out the content. I just cut out little areas like the ums and the, you knows and all that kind of stuff to make it flow better. But obviously when you're editing a video that's an hour long, that takes a while to do that. And so it just is eating it. It's just tough to get it all done. And a lot of people on here who have videos, who have a channel and edit their videos, they understand the time it takes. And so I really do plan to just kind of take a little bit of an approach. I'm really trying to just become a better beekeeper too. And I want to really focus on spending time with the bees, and not spend, you know, have to set up the camera and do all that every time. I want to really, and as I get better, hopefully I'll film better techniques and better things that I'm doing. And so channel's still here. We're going to still keep posting, but just not 2 or 3 times a week. So just in case you see a back tick on the frequency, that's why. And but that's kind of my plans. As far as my own operation, like I say, I've got a bead on some really nice queens, I think, coming in the next few weeks, hopefully maybe in July. Going to make some splits, some late season splits. Hope to get some from Greg and just tone things down even more, especially up in Ozark. I'd like to see that bee yard going from, you know, sock stapling bees to, you know, puppy dog bees up there. So we'll see how that works out. But
yeah.
Anyway, that's kind of where we're at down here in Alabama at let's see. I don't know what Philip says something. People are.
He said leave the junk videos to.
No, everybody listen. This is the way I feel about it, because I was talking to another YouTuber just a couple of weeks ago, and he says, "Well, I don't edit because I want people to get the real experience." So I'm like, that is perfectly fine. I think there's room for everyone and their own technique. I think if you take that approach, I do think that you need to be careful about the content that you're posting and try to, you know, if you're not going to edit, just try to post things that, you know, kind of, that's one way you can improve, is by kind of filtering through what you post. Don't post every little thing that you do. It's my opinion. But everybody has their own techniques, their own personality, their own way of doing things. And that's what makes it wonderful. So there is no right or wrong way to do it. Everybody's got to do their own thing and what they want to do. I've got my own approach, and I'm kind of a perfectionist. I don't do anything halfway. I try not to. And so, you know, if I learn a new technique, I just got, I'm almost I don't know, OCD about stuff sometimes when it comes to that. So I do stress about it, but that's just kind of my technique. But everybody just keep doing what you're doing. And as long as you're trying to improve one way or another, just, if you want to do that, fine. You know, if you're trying to grow your channel, you always got to be working at trying to get a little, just improve your game. But everybody's got their own philosophy of what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I say go for it, whatever that is.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. For me, I probably will end up within the next week. I'll probably be pulling some honey. I know I've got to, like, we're still in the midst of a flow, but I think I probably will harvest what's out there just so that I kind of split it up, just because if I wait another week or so for all this clover and everything to finish up, it's just going to be so much for one day. So I'll probably split my harvest up into two. But, besides that, I know I've got some queens order from Greg. I've got 10 of the solstice queens ordered. So I'm going to go through and like colonies. I think both of the ones at the farm, I'm probably going to requeen both of those because I think you sent some of your Alabama genetics up to those two because they were stapling my pants today.
Which ones?
So, they're the ones out at the farmer's property. They're just, but they're very large colonies, very large colonies. And the last few days we had rain, and now today it almost looked like we had fog. There's that much smoke out there. So, it could just be multiple factors leading to their behavior. And I haven't been in them in probably 5 weeks. So I go in and I'm cracking boxes. Well, yeah, they're going to get a little testy. But, I'm going to go through and I need to probably here very soon select which colonies I want to requeen. So, and like you said, of course, I'm not going to touch the ones that, the 3 that I got from Corey. I just want to see how those do. So I need to probably just identify those 10. I've got 2 queens still from 21 that I'm just kind of letting them do their thing. I mean, they're still laying up eggs from one edge of a frame to the other. So I'm like, yeah, let them go, So if they eventually teeter out, I mean, the colony will supersede them. They'll replace them. So, but.
Hey, could we answer another question or two real quick, Brian?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
From David Kress, he says, I have uncapped honey. Can I pull it if dry enough before they take it back if the flow ends?
Definitely.
Yes, you can if it's dry enough. Now, I'm not scientific. I mean, the best thing to do is take a refractometer out there and check it.
Yeah.
But my test when I'm in the bee yard, when I'm going through hundreds of boxes of honey or hundreds of frames of honey, is to pull that frame out, turn it sideways, and just shake it really hard towards the top of the box. And if you shake that thing really hard and no nectar comes out, then odds are it's dry enough. I've had good success. I'm not telling you this is not science. This is not, this is like a how I do, not a how to do it, but I've had fine success doing that. If it's too wet, and Lisa can tell you, we did this with mine. A lot of it was, well, not a lot of it. Mine was probably 90% catch. We did have some that had some of that in there. And if it doesn't shake out, then it should be good to go. That's just been my experience, and you can take it. But obviously, if you can wait till they cap it, that's better. But it would be interesting just to take a refractometer out there with you and just check it and see.
I will say, and I don't know what part of the country he's in, but there's been people in Ohio that have been reporting, like they've been going out and checking their uncapped, just with these cheaper refractometers. And there's some people that have been seeing like 15.5, 16 uncapped. And that's
exactly
plenty dry enough.
I think sometimes they must just not have the flow may end, or for whatever reason, they just don't tend to cap it very quickly. And they go ahead and cure it. They get it ready, but they just don't cap it. I'm not sure if it's the age of the bees in the hive. I don't know why that is.
I wonder also though, too, because what we saw last year is there was such a strong flow coming in that they weren't even building comb. They were literally throwing nectar wherever they could find it. So, I'm sure there's so many different factors that play into, when the bees cap it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, man, I think we answered most of the questions. If we didn't get everybody's questions answered, we apologize. Maybe ask it next time. I know there was 1 or 2 in there I don't think we got to, but it's probably about time to go ahead and wrap it up for the night. I know it's getting late for you guys over there on the East Coast. and
Yeah,
over there in Eastern
yeah.
time zone. So
Good stuff though. Enjoyed it.
it was fun having Fred on
Yeah.
and Tracy.
Yeah.
My Hive Butler's been sitting up in my barn. I haven't used it just a couple of times. It just kind of it kind of was in the way, but I just didn't really know how to use it or just really put a lot of thought into it. But maybe I'm gonna pull that thing out and start trying it out with some split screens, see how it works. I could definitely use it when I lean my frames up against the side of the box. I'm just gonna try it out and see if that seems more convenient to me just to set it in there. It shouldn't take any more time to do that. Why not just have it there handy? So I think I'm gonna try that and see what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, appreciate y'all being on here.
Everybody, thank you for watching. And I think whose channel is it next week?
I think it's supposed to be mine. Is that
yours?
I know last week. Oh, I did want to mention too, guys, before we close out here. Last week, if you weren't able to catch it, we weren't able to do the stream team, and so Brian and Greg were both kind of unable to make it, and so I just jumped on with Cayman. He was gracious enough. I asked him a question, Cayman Reynolds, and he thought I was inviting him to the stream teams, and he was getting everything set up. So I'm like, let's just do a stream. Let's do a live stream. And we jumped on and had about a 2-hour chat on here and talked about an hour after the chat was over and just had a tremendous chat. It was really good. We talked about, the intentional beekeeping thing I'm doing, and also about some basics, just really good bee basics, queens, mites, nutrition, all that kind of stuff. Just kind of broke it down, and we just kind of sat and just chatted about it, and it was really, really fun. So if you haven't had a chance to go back and watch that on my channel from last week with Cayman, the intentional beekeeping playlist, I think it's on the intentional beekeeping playlist. It's also just on my channel there into the live chats, but I think you'd enjoy watching that. People seem to be enjoying that. So anyway, but yeah, I think it's going to be on my channel next week, Brian. I don't think there's any reason to change it unless you guys want to. But we'll do it next week on my channel, and I don't have a topic yet in mind, but
good deal.
We'll
figure it out.
If anybody has any ideas for a topic, just throw it on my YouTube channel. I'm like, email me or we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, until next week, everybody. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.